But my name is Bryan Thomas Schmidt. I am the author and editor of 22 anthologies and numerous novels, the most famous of which is The Martian by Andy Weir, which of course was an international bestseller.
Hey,
Hi! I was just talking about you. I was
yeah.
just show. And so this is Aleese, guys. If you follow her, please give some likes here and follow the show. Follow her. She is a fellow TikToker. She
Yep.
is a author of primarily, I believe, fantasy, right? Or is it romantasy?
It's mostly fantasy. I try
Yeah.
to put fantasy in all my books anyway, because I
Yes.
feel like a story without romance is kind of bleh, in my opinion.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough, fair enough. But she's got a lot of books out. What is your latest one that just came out? I forgot to look that up.
It is, I actually have it right here with me. It's this one. It's a YA
Okay.
dystopian romance. So yeah, this one is mainly romance.
But she's
So
got the Inspector Mage series, which has two or three books, two at least, right?
it has the first two out, yes, and the
Yeah.
third one comes out next year. So those are
So
these.
check out the Inspector Mage series, and I know you've got one other series as well, right?
Yes, this was my very first series. There's a lot in it.
So
Um,
those
they're
are
like
fantasy, if I remember right. Straight, pretty much.
fantasy fairy tale retellings, and I
There
also
you
have
go. There you
this
go.
cute
Okay,
little
folks.
Christmas
So,
one.
yes. So let's talk a little bit with Aleese about all this. We're going to learn a lot more about it, and we're going to talk about how she got into all this stuff. So, first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell me, so you are obviously you've been doing this TikTok thing for a little bit. How did you become a writer, and how did you wind up? Well, let's start with how did you become a writer. We'll ask the other thing later.
Well, so I don't even remember learning how to read because I picked it up like that. My mom always says that I just started picking up all the chapter books, and so my first memory of reading was when I picked up one of the first Harry Potter book, and I hadn't even started kindergarten yet, and I read all of it. Then I went to kindergarten with book three, and I was reading it during reading time, and my teacher's like, what? But yeah, and ever since I wanted to be a writer. So
Those were magnificent books, I have to say. You know, I didn't get to them till later. I was a little older when they came out. I'm 54 now, so I didn't get to them till later. And I heard a lot of people grouse about various silly things that ended up being nothing. But I wasn't sure what to make of them. But one day, a friend of mine's daughter, kept telling me all about them, and she was so in love with them. And I said, well, I need to check these out. So I went and I bought one. I read it, and I just went out and bought them all. I have them all in hardcover, and it's great. I mean, I just really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, they're a fun series. So when did you start writing? As like
um,
when you were a kid, were you fiddling?
yeah, I actually wrote my first full book by the time I was 8. Not that it was like crazy long or anything, but it was about 20,000 words, which for an 8-year-old I think is
8 year old, 20,000. God, I was gonna say I wrote my first books about that time too, but they were little fanfic chapter books, for like some of my favorite series. 20,000 words. You were ambitious. You didn't waste time, did you?
I just really liked it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so how did you do anything to study craft and learn writing? Obviously, you've come a long way. You're not 8 years old anymore, but I mean, what did you go to school for writing? How did you learn to make sure you were doing it right? You're doing well.
So that's a really, really good question. I'm I've been mostly an entertainer my whole life, so I went to school for musical theater. And but I did end up getting to take Brandon Sanderson's class at BYU.
Oh, very cool.
And I also I've just been writing my whole life, and my first series, I'm going to rewrite these someday, but these ones were like kind of my trial. They were my I couldn't pay for editors or anything, and they were like my I really suck at writing right now, but I'm gonna get better books. Granted, they still got me my first 10,000 newsletter subscribers because people still enjoyed it. But I just think through the years of just continuously writing, since I've written so many books at this point, and I've been able to work with so many amazing editors, I just feel like through that experience, I've been able to learn how
Your
to write
first
better.
10,000 subscribers. How many subscribers do you have now?
It's still around there. It's getting around like 15,000
I
newsletter
was going to say,
subscribers.
man, I can't get past 100. I mean, I'm still struggling to build up my newsletter, so that's pretty cool. I know you have 10,000 or so followers here, about 10.5 or
I
something
have
like that.
about 33,000, but
Oh,
that's a funny
33.
story
Okay, I
because
misread that. Okay, 33.
my
Okay.
first like 25,000 came from when my TikTok was dedicated to my singing videos. I
Oh,
completely switched once I was like, okay, I need to start marketing my books. So most of my followers were, wow, she's a good singer and dancer, so
it's yeah. I haven't done much. I grew up in the whole musical theater thing too, and I used to be a professional singer for a while before I went into the writing, and so I still write songs and do stuff. So I fiddle around a little bit on there right now, but I haven't really. Right now, I don't. I'm redoing my house, so I don't have my piano and all this stuff ready. So at some point, I will be doing some of those, but those are my sideline to my author stuff. So yeah, I get it. Yeah, she. I don't know if it's. I hopefully I'm allowed to say this because she's actually a dancer and she spends a lot of time on the weekends going out and performing professionally. So Aleese has got multiple talents here. Tell us. Let's see. Where did you grow up? You grew up obviously. You went to BYU. Did you grow up in Utah or where'd you grow up?
So my dad is also an entertainer, and
Right.
he did a lot of Broadway shows and a lot of touring shows, and we basically lived wherever he had a show. So I moved maybe 25 times before I got married,
Wow. Wow.
and so I'm not really from anywhere. I was born in California, but
Gotcha.
I lived the most in Missouri, and that's where I met my husband when I was a baby, and then we
You've
moved
known
back
your
to
husband
Missouri.
since you were a baby?
Yeah, I was 2, he was 3, and we were in nursery school together in our church, and our parents were like, we want them to get married, and we ended up getting married. So,
Wow, that really worked out for the parents, didn't it?
yeah.
That's cool. I live in Kansas, and I actually spent a lot of time in St. Louis. So I lived several years in St. Louis. So yeah. Anyway, that's my territory. Anyway, cool. Well, so what you went into writing? What made you decide after you had obviously done the writing as a kid, and you were doing musical theater. How do you choose? I mean, you obviously haven't chosen totally, but rather than dedicating yourself to a theater career, you put all this time into writing. Obviously, that can take away from some of your opportunities. How do you balance all that? And now, of course, you're married, and do you have kids?
I have 2 kids. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got a lot on your plate.
I do have a lot on my plate. I am a part-time performer right now. I work with my books and all of that thing because, as an indie author, you cover everything, right? But
Sure.
so that I probably dedicate on average 40 hours a week, and my kids are always on my lap or they have their babysitter here. And then I don't do shows every day or every season. It's usually a couple shows every other month, and then the Christmas season it picks up a bit, and that during the Christmas season is when I put the books aside and I do Christmas shows, like 10 shows a week usually. But I've kind of just had to find a balance, and I'm one of those people who likes to be busy. I don't like sitting around. So
Yeah, my fiance's the same way. She always wants to be busy. I'm much more likely to relax in front of the TV. She doesn't do that very often, but I'll relax with the kids and hang out.
yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so you said you took that class. I know Brandon Sanderson is one of your kind of your icons of writing, and I actually I've met Brandon and interviewed him, and so I was actually got to study under him. That must
Well,
have been a
I
really.
I took his class through him filming it for us live.
Oh, okay.
And everything. So I didn't actually get to talk to him, but I was able to write along with the class and everything. And I was too busy with my dancing and my acting classes to actually go in there with him.
Oh,
But I
gotcha.
was able to watch them as he was doing them.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Well, one of these days, hopefully, you'll get to meet him. He's a very nice guy, very nice
Yeah.
guy. So, tell me about some of the books that inspire you. I mean, we're going to talk about your series too. Get me wrong, but obviously, Brandon. Since we already brought up Brandon, Brandon is a big one for you. Do you have a favorite Brandon book?
My favorite of his are probably the Stormlight Archive, um, mainly because they focus so heavily on mental health, and that has been a huge struggle for me my whole life. And those just spoke to me more than any book ever has, and they just inspired me to keep going with my writing.
I
So
really
those,
have to. I really need to read those because I have had interaction with mental health issues through my ex-wife was bipolar and we had dealt with a lot of stuff. I had to unfortunately institutionalize her, and that was a real painful period. And I've dealt with depression, so it's interesting to hear you say that. I know that what's his name? One of Brandon's friends also wrote some really good books that deal with. There's one that I Am a Serial Killer, and then well, I remember the other one. But anyway, Dan Wells wrote some really good books on mental illness, and might be of interest. But they're really good. So who else inspires you? Who are the other authors that are like favorite reads that you like? Pretty much, you see a book coming out, it's like I gotta get it. I gotta get it.
So I always loved when I was a kid J.K. Rowling. I mean, I know she's super out there right now, but Harry Potter, I those books have a special place in my heart because they were my childhood, right? And they're first what inspired me to write. Lord of the Rings. Uh, I remember Aragon being a big part of my book loving as a teenager. I just really like young adult, really good young adult ones too, because that's what I write, and I enjoy reading that to keep up with the times. I really liked the new, man, what's her name? The woman who wrote the Caraval series. When her next book came out, The Once
Oh
Upon a
yeah,
Broken Heart, that came out, I just bought it immediately. But
yeah, yeah. Well, no, and here's the thing about. I mean, I'm not going to argue in favor of the things that J.K. Rowling has said any more than I would in the favor of things that one of my icons, Orson Scott Card, said. Although, I can tell you, Orson Scott Card is one of the kindest, nicest people I've ever worked with in my life.
one of
But
my
I can
favorites.
separate the art from the person and still enjoy the art as long as that message is not pounded through my head in the art. And in both cases, I don't think it is. So that's one of the things that is nice. But it's unfortunate that all of these things get mixed up in it because, yes, those books for me, the Ender books were iconic.
Yeah.
And to not feel like I could read them anymore or talk about them was really difficult. But at the same time, for you, the Harry Potter books. So I get it. I get it. So tell us about your series. Your first series was fantasy. We talked a little bit about it, and it was kind of as you said, kind of getting out there and saying, this may not be the best, but this is the best I can do right now, and let's see what happens. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
So yeah, they were always books I wanted to write, like the fairy tale retelling type stuff. And at the time, I knew nothing about self-publishing or the publishing industry in general. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write some books, put them out there, tell people I did, and see what happens. And I had a pretty decent response with them. I do want to redo them all at some point because I've gotten so much better and I have the means to bring editors and designers on my team and stuff like that. But at least I've had a lot of people enjoy them, and a huge bulk of my audience was people who liked these initially. So,
But what's the first book in that series? What's the
it's
name of
called Peas and Princesses. So they retell all the fairy tales. So obviously this one's Princess and the Pea,
it? Right,
and it
right, right.
goes through 6 different fairy tales. So, and there
And
are two novellas
are,
within it.
are they standalones or are they something you can just pick up anywhere and go?
They are standalones, so you can pick it up anywhere within the story, but they connect in like little ways. So,
Like it's the
like you'll
same
see,
same universe, maybe?
yeah, same universe. You can see some of the same characters pop up here and there,
Okay.
but it focuses on that new character completely in the
Oh,
new
very
series.
cool. Very yes,
Mhm.
I get it. I get it. It's kind of like for those I don't we have some romance readers in the audience. There's a series that they do where it's like a group of friends, and one book focuses on one that falls in love, and the next one focuses on another one, that kind of thing. But it's good because you can pick up literally any book. So if you run across one of her books, and how do you say your name, Elise, or is that how you say it?
Yes,
I just want to make sure
most
I was
people
saying
don't
it.
say it right, so I wouldn't have put it against you.
No, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I was saying it right. I had actually had a friend at high school whose sister was named Aleese, and it was kind of like that. So that's why I guessed that way. But anyway, yeah. So you could pick up her books. The next series you did was the Mage series, right? Inspector Mage.
Yes. So at that point, I knew a lot more. I hired a marketer initially to help teach me how the industry worked, and so I was able to do the things I needed to do, right? And I had an awesome editor. One of the editors for this book was the editor of Harry Potter 3, actually. So
Really, very cool.
yeah, it was really cool. And my main editor, he was the chief editor for the New York Times a while back, and it just that to me, that moment of being able to do that and to hire editors into my process just felt like a milestone in my writing career, you know?
Sure. Well, you don't probably don't know this about me, but my full time job where I make most of my income is freelance editing. I actually edited The Martian for Andy Weir, and I've edited a bunch of different books. So yeah, I get it. I mean, it's really if you get the right editor and the right author together, there's a lot of magic that can happen. It really, you're able to bring out and make the book. I always tell people the magic happens in the rewrite. Get that first draft done. That's the hardest thing to do. But then it doesn't look like the house you imagined in your head. But once you start putting the wallpaper and the carpet and all that's what you do with the editor. And then it sparkles, and you're like, oh, I wrote that.
Yeah.
You have stuff on audiobook?
Not yet.
Okay.
This is really sad. I had this amazing Broadway actress who wanted to record Inspector Mage, but COVID hit her really hard and she's completely lost her voice and
Oh,
hasn't gotten back for like a year. And so she couldn't do it. So I'm thinking of recording my audiobooks. It depends on how much time I have, but since I'm also an actress, I'm like, I think this is something I could probably do. And it might be cool. My reader's going, oh, the author read it.
yeah. Well, and I just got my first novel on audiobook. I've had several short stories and things done, but in my second novel that's being done on audiobook, I'm listening to now in pieces, and it's fun because in both cases I'd been away from it long enough that it was like rediscovering the book, and you're like, wow, I really wrote that. That's pretty good. It's really
Yeah.
kind of a flattering thing to hear it read, and reading is such an important part. Do you have people read your book to you before as part of the editing process?
Um, kind of. I mean, I like to read it out loud to myself.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
definitely read it a lot, and it goes through the four edits, the developmental, the line edit, the copy edit, the proofread, that sort of thing. And even after the proofread, I usually read it out loud to myself all the
Yeah.
way through, you know, and that usually helps me.
Do you use the same editors for all those, or just separate editors?
Um, Sometimes it's the same editor. It depends because I like to go through this company called Editing. They're really good. I really like them. And when they have people available based on what my deadline is, I will have a different editor for the proofread, but they usually keep me with the same guy for the first three.
Yeah,
So,
I got you. I got you. Well, and some editors don't always want, like, I'll do line edits and developmental edits, and then I want to move it on to somebody else to get a fresh perspective because I think it's
yeah,
helpful for the author.
yeah.
So I tend not to, because at a certain point I lose my objectivity too, and I get too close to the book. Especially depending on if it's like a few months in between, it's much easier to do than if it's somebody who's kind of just pushing it on through. Because I don't want to miss anything for them. So yeah, that's why I was curious. So how did you go about getting published? You self-published all of them. Is that correct?
Yes, I
So how did
have.
you discover? I mean, you said you got somebody to kind of walk you through marketing for Inspector Mage, right? How did you figure you kind of just stumbled through figuring it out, or how did you figure out through self-publishing, the first those fairy tales that you started with?
The first ones, it was very much a stumble through and a lot of research and a lot of tears and breakdowns. Like I bought the covers and I was like, that's all I need to do, yay, to publish it. Things had to be things had to be resized, things had to be done. I had to keep talking about them. I had to find keywords. There's just so many things, and I know there's so much more I can learn, but I feel like at this point, after 7 years of doing it, I am in a much better place to keep doing it.
Sure, sure, sure. But I mean, yeah, because it's overwhelming. I mean, it's for those who don't know, writing is a business, and literally, I mean, it doesn't matter if you hate marketing. And believe me, marketing is not my favorite thing in the world. And I've been lucky to be published by some traditional presses as well as indies. But the simple fact is that's about 30% to more of your time that you're going to have to spend. Once you get the machine up and going, you can spend less time on it. But it really is a part of the job. The other part of the job is the writing itself. Then you got to go through the editing and cleanup. But you also have to do social media. Which is part of your marketing. So it is definitely something you're going to put 40 or more hours into if you really want to succeed.
Yeah.
So, and you can spend a lot of money too if you don't know what you're doing, which can be good or bad depending on whether you have the support of your loved ones or whether anybody makes money in the family. So that's one of the pitfalls that people should keep in mind. But did so you got those five out? You did the Inspector Mage. You're doing a third one? You said for the Inspector Mage, right? The second one's out. These are mysteries, as I recall, right?
Yes, they're fantasy murder mysteries, so they're kind of a combination of the two. But yeah, it's like focuses heavily on the mystery, and there's like a romantic subplot and that type of thing. I always tell people, like, think Sherlock Holmes meets magical abilities, like, so
Yeah.
those are those.
So the main character obviously is Inspector Mage. Who is Inspector Mage? Tell us about Inspector Mage.
His name is Russell Gaines, and he's actually a former inspector. And one of the running jokes in the books is he quit being an inspector because his sister died from his nemesis. His nemesis killed her. So he
Oh,
quit. He's like, I can't do this anymore. This is the very beginning of the book, so I'm not spoiling anything.
yeah, no, it's fine.
So he stops, but he gets called back because they're like, only he can solve these mysteries. Like, he's amazing. And everyone keeps calling him inspector. And the running joke is that he's like, I am not an inspector. Not anymore. Don't call me that. So that's the running joke, and that's why I titled it that way. And they all have mage gifts in this world where everyone is born with a special magical ability from their god. And that's where the word mage comes from in the title, too.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I figured. I mean, is his last name is not Mage?
No. No, he's just a mage.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I guess I missed that connection. That's good to know. Okay, so then now you've got this latest book that's out. Tell us about that.
Edge of the Barrier. Yes, that's
Yes,
right.
I knew it was Ed something. I didn't want to say it wrong. Edge of the Barrier. Okay.
Yes. This one is something I was wanting to write in between Inspector Mages because for me, it works if while one of my books is going through the editing process, I start working on the other story I'm working on so that my brain kind of feels fresh. But
Yes,
I try not to work on more than two at once, But so this is what was happening in between Inspector Mage 1 and 2, what I was writing. And it's a YA dystopian romance novel. So think Hunger Games, Divergent, and The Selection, like all mashed together.
And is this part of a series also? Are you going to write more books in this?
Yes, I think there'll be 2 or 3 more in this series. This is definitely the first book.
And is that going to continue the characters? Or is that going to be kind of a same world, little crossover, but new main characters thing?
It'll continue the characters. Our main character in this one, Anne, she will be the main character throughout the whole series.
Okay. So tell us about Anne a little bit.
So she's a very ambitious young lady. She really wants to become a doctor like her dad. And in this world, in this dystopian world, it's like 1,000 years from our time, and aliens completely attacked, destroyed everything except for this little piece of America that they were able to put a force field over. And so one of the rules they have in this dystopian society is that you have to take career tests. And whatever test you score highest in, you have to have a job in that category. And so she's, really hoping for this doctor. And she's very ambitious. She's very kind. She loves helping people. And she has a hard time seeing the wrong in people without wanting to help them change and going, it's okay that they're this way. It's like they're different than me, to a fault. Because sometimes you can be too kind.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. Yeah. That's kind of how I was raised too, and it's tough sometimes to learn where you have to set those boundaries. So it's a good opportunity for conflict in a story, obviously, and for character growth. So that sounds great. So it sounds to me, I mean, you've gone kind of from the fairy tale fantasy, you've gone to mystery fantasy, and now you're kind of touching on sci-fi. I like that. I mean, I like that because I keep forgetting to put my hand in front of my face. Is not good on this green screen. Sorry. Anyway, so. Yeah, I really like that you're kind of crossing that over and kind of blending them together. Everything sounds like it's mixed. So you're a fan of both fantasy and sci-fi.
Yeah, I'm trying to, what I write, people like ask me fantasy or science fiction. I usually say YA fiction. That basically covers what I write, YA fiction. So, yeah.
Now, one of the projects that is a side project, not to get away from her writing, because we'll get back on that in a minute, but that I find interesting, that's really cool, that Aleese is doing, is she's reading indie books by TikTok authors. And she's taken on, what are you reading, 100 or 50? I don't remember. 50, all right? 50.
That's almost a full year of books, because I'm reading one a week.
Yeah. So she's reading 50 books by authors. How's that going? How many have you read so far?
I am currently on number 6.
Number 6.
It's going really well. And I've found a couple actually that I'm like, okay, these are in my top 10 favorite books.
Really? That's awesome.
It's pretty impressive. I love what inspired me to do it I apologize in advance. My kids are going
It's
nuts
fine.
right
It's fine.
now.
It's fine.
My husband had to leave for a last minute meeting, so they're going a little crazy.
No, that's no
But
problem.
hey, Anna, close the door. It's exciting, kids. That's just how life is. Anyway, what
Yeah.
inspired me to do that sort of project is, you know what? I know how hard it is to be an indie author. I know how much work we put into it. What is something I can do to show my love for other people going through the same thing? You know, and so I started that, and I got like almost 2,000 people giving me their books to read, and I could only pick 50. I was like, I don't have time
I
to read
know, because I put my book in the pile. But that's what I came on here with my attitude. I really wanted to do book talk because I wanted to expand my marketing, but I also really like interacting with people. And so
everything.
my attitude was, okay, I'm going to be a good citizen, which is why I started the show. Ultimately, I said, this is something I'm good at. I can interview people. I enjoy talking with people, having fun with a conversation. And I said, so the other thing I want to do is I want to support all the critics. So that's why I started following all the book talkers like you. You were one of the people I discovered, and just interacting and offering encouragement, and also just retweeting whenever I see like somebody promoting their book, because I figured, this is the way we can help each other. And I don't look at it as competition. Some people are still in that point where they're stuck in that thing, but it really isn't competition, especially when you look at all the book talker reviewers. These are people who are these are people who are constantly reading so many books that they're gonna run out. So you don't have to look at it as competition. You could be next in the stack. So I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the things that's nice about book talk. I think is it makes people aware of how many avid readers there are that go through all these books. There's an opportunity for everybody.
Right. Sorry, my daughter wants me to open her chips.
No, it's no problem. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, I feel like this whole we're in competition thing is so pointless. Because, like, why don't we just all support each other? Because some of my best moments of book sales has been other authors just being behind me, you know?
Sure. Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm always like, what do you like to read? And if they don't like something of mine, I'll always try to think of somebody else. Oh, you should check this out.
Mhm.
And authors will say, oh, I really like what you're doing. Then I'll read your book, and then I read theirs, and then we discover, hey, I got a new favorite author, and it's cool. And I also I edit a lot of anthologies, so I always hire a lot of authors and give them the opportunity to be in books with some of their heroes. So if I ever do fantasy or something with Brandon Sanderson, I'll come to you. But yeah, I hire and I pay people to basically make stories, and it's really cool. I was going to ask you, do you do short fiction? I think you said something about a couple novellas or something that you have.
Yeah, so in the fairy tale series, 2 of the 6 of the books are novellas about some of the more minor characters. And I also have my Christmas one. I'll be really honest. This was my least favorite thing to write. This is very Hallmark in a book. I wrote it because my husband was like, if we sell this at our theater during Christmas time, they will love it. And he was right. So I wrote it. And it didn't take me that long. But yeah,
So
it's my
he has
style.
a theater. Does he run? He runs a theater.
Yeah, we have our
He
family.
runs a theater. I'm sorry. He runs.
Yes, his family runs a theater and he's one of
Oh,
the ones in charge and I perform with them and that sort of thing. Yeah.
oh, that's cool. So he's a good supporter because he understands the whole business of it. That's cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. That's always good. That's one of the challenges I was going to ask you. I mean, not to invade your privacy, but living with other people as a writer can be a challenge sometimes. So, that's great. That's great. So, okay, I'm going to open this up to questions. The questions should only. Hey, Christy is saying hi down here. I don't know if you saw that.
Hi,
Um,
Christy.
if people want to ask questions, please ask questions about writing, publishing, and of course Aleese's books. Okay, you can ask me a couple if you want, but it's not about me. I'm hosting her today, and again at the beginning and end, I tell everybody about me. So if anybody has questions, we will keep talking, but we will look for those questions down here below. I'll try to keep up with them. I'm going to scroll back through here real quick, see if anybody asked anything so far. Not yet. Uh, Somebody said say the book again. I'm not sure. Jeff, what book did you want us to say again? I'm sorry, I missed that. Anyway, so all right. So what's your writing process like? How long does it take you to write a book?
It depends on how long the book is, but I typically block out a month to get a first draft done. And I've gotten really good at that first draft process where I just get it all out, right? And then I usually do a second draft before I send it to the first editor. And then all of that happens and it gets edited, and it's basically, yeah.
And how long? I mean, it looked like the fairy tale books were a little shorter than Inspector Mage, but that may be formatting. How long is your typical novel that you put out?
They're usually around 50,000 words. I'm working on one right now that's going to be a longer, more epic fantasy that's going to be around 100,000 words, 80 to 100,000. Edge of the Barrier was about 70,000 words. So it's
You can
in
do
that
that
range.
in a month? That's amazing. That's amazing to me. Yeah, that's great. It usually takes me 120,000 words takes me 3 months, and I generally come in around that. So yeah, that's great. And so how many drafts do you do before you're done? Do you do multiple drafts before you even go to the editor? How does all that work?
I usually do 2 or 3 before the first editor. And then after a developmental edit, I sometimes will do 2 drafts after that, depending on how I feel about where the story has gone. Like with Edge of the Barrier, I finished the developmental edit and I went back 3 times and redid the whole thing. So that one, I just wasn't liking the changes I was making, so I just had to keep making more and more drafts before the line edit for it.
Gotcha. Well, Oz has a question, and his question, I think we talked about this a little bit, but he missed what was the motivation to start writing?
Well, I'll kind of abbreviate it, but I always loved reading. Don't remember learning how to read because I picked it up so fast. I read Harry Potter in kindergarten and was in love with writing and reading since then. And I started writing books, and I finished my first shorter 20,000 word book when I was like 8. And I've
Yeah, can
always
you
loved
believe
it.
that? 20,000 words as an 8-year-old, man. This is somebody who doesn't play around, I'll tell you what. Christy's excited that you're reading her book next in the indie pile, I guess.
Yes, yeah. I
She
just
can't
downloaded it on my Kindle, so
she can't give you a review for it yet. She hasn't read it yet. It's called The Kingdoms Divided. It's written by under the name of G.K. Archer. It's a fantasy romance, and you can get it on Kindle Unlimited, among other places. I just asked her what it was, so that's why I'm giving that information. All right. So anyway, so you go through, and then you go to the editor, and you go through at least 4 drafts with editors because you have the 4 editorial processes, right? I mean, how heavy I mean I know it depends on what the editor says, but do you stick pretty close to the edits, or do you tend to like, oh, I got to fix everything and go through and fix all this stuff? What's your I guess what I'm really asking is how much do you rely on the editor, and how much do you say, okay, these are things I know I need to work on. What else can you find? Kind of process. What's the dialogue like?
So, my editors usually write me an editorial letter. I know most editors do that for
Yeah.
like, okay, so here are my overall thoughts. So initially, I'll take that letter, I'll write down on sticky notes all the things they tell me to specifically pay attention for, and I'll usually hang them on my writing wall, like in my office.
Yeah.
Okay, she's joining.
Oh, hi. Hi, sweetie. Are you eating chips or are you eating something else? Oh,
She's
that
eating a
looks.
sticker.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I'll
Okay.
write down all those things. And then with all of those things in mind, I will go through every single page and read every single edit suggestion and determine, do I agree? Because I feel like you have to balance like, yes, they're right, I'm not right, I need to let go, versus I am really not sure they're right. It's quite a bit of a
Sure.
thought process, I think. Most of the time I completely agree with them. I'm like, oh, they're right, okay, and I'll fix it.
And
And
you
then I'll usually
discussed
go
that with,
back.
I assume you discussed that with them before. I mean, kind of get their perspective to kind of make sure you're right, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely, I'm always like emailing them back and forth. It's like, hey, so this is what I meant here. Does that make more sense to you? And a lot of the time they'll go, oh yeah, just maybe like clarify that in the next chapter or something, and that'll really solve the issue, things like that.
Yeah,
So,
because I think what the biggest problems that I find with writers who have as much experience as you do are they just have everything in their head. Not all of it gets on the page. So sometimes they just need to add things that seem so clear to them that the audience just needs it. People tend not to. If you don't say it 3 times, they don't remember it. So there's different ways of saying the same thing, and that's often a process that gets lost in the shuffle. But yeah, exactly. So you were so cute.
I'm so sorry.
No,
They
don't be
were
sorry.
upstairs watching a movie.
No, I love kids. I have no problem with it. And if anybody has a problem with it, just don't worry about it because I think it's great. I think it's great. So,
It's my birthday tomorrow.
Okay.
really, have you read Mama's books yet? You guys haven't read Mama's books yet, have you? No,
Nope.
you're too young.
You're too
No.
young. Okay.
All right, let's see if I missed any questions real quick down here. I don't see anything else on here yet. So, let's talk about the self-publishing. Do you go straight through Amazon, or do you use other services?
So I use Amazon right now because for me, I wanted my first few books to be through Kindle Unlimited to gain an audience. My next series after Inspector Mage and Up to the Barrier, I'm going to start going through Ingram Spark and putting them everywhere. So that's my plan. Right now I'm trying to keep building an audience and just, starting slow, just keep chugging away.
Sure.
Okay.
And how do you find the distribution kind of? Distribution is a good point. That's not what I mean. That's not the right word. Do you sell? Obviously, you sell more ebooks generally, right? And you do get. How's the split between selling ebooks and doing Kindle Unlimited, that kind of thing?
Right. So I feel like it's about even right now.
Really?
I feel like a lot of people who buy their books on Amazon are Kindle Unlimited subscribers. I mean, I might be wrong, but that's what it looks like when I look at my reports. And that's where I gain most of my, followers and my newsletter subscribers are people who, oh my goodness, just like Kindle Unlimited. Huh.
Yeah. And how do you route them to your newsletter? I'm just curious. I mean, guys, this is actually really important. Look, you want to support an author, you need to review their books on Amazon, and usually, and I'm going to find out from Aleese how she does it, but usually they put like a link or something at the back of the book, or even at the front of the and back of the book. But how do you go about getting people funneled to there and encouraging them to interact?
Right, that's a really good question. I actually have a lot of different ways. You want to make sure that your newsletter a link to your newsletter is on everything you do. I have a link in my link tree. I have a link on my website. I have a scan code on my business card. I've got a link in my book for them to click. And I also use BookFunnel. I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of that.
I use BookFunnel. Yeah.
I give away free samples or free books. Like I give away the full Peas and Princesses book to anyone who signs up for my newsletter. And just those types of things is really how I built it. Just put it everywhere.
See, I'm going to go sign up to her newsletter so I can read one of her books. Not that I'm going to buy some other books. I usually buy them in print because I spend all day looking at a computer when I'm editing. So the last thing I want to do is stare at a screen. I want to pick up a book and just read traditionally. But I could definitely, read. I always get the giveaways because it's a chance to try out new authors and say, "Oh, I love it." Then I'll go buy all the books. What do you sell a lot of print too, or do you? I mean, obviously,
So I talked about this a little bit, but at our theater, since we own our theater, I usually sell books. What? Turn that down. Sorry, she just turned on a show in my room. Okay. I usually sell signed books at our theater, and I sell thousands every few months, just to people who liked watching me sing. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you write too? I'll buy your book." And I'm just I'm kind of lucky because they're buying my book based on the fact that they liked me on stage, not with anything to do with.
No. I mean, whatever works for marketing, that's great. I mean, I wish I had an outlet like that too. But yeah, I get you. No, that's great. I mean, and I sell a lot of stuff at conferences when I do speaking or when I do convention panels, all that. And speaking of which, I do want to tell you about this. This is kind of just an aside between the two authors here real quick. Excuse me, folks. There's a convention called 20 Books, Vegas. 20 Books to 50K. It's the biggest gathering of indie authors. It's taking place the second week of November. It takes place every year out there. And Amazon comes, Blackstone comes, all the big Podium, all the Bargain Booksy, all the people you just mentioned, BookFunnel are there. You can actually meet them in person. All this, and then at the end of the week they have a big signing with 300 authors, which this year's November 10th. I'm doing it with a bunch of people, and with one of my buddies, we're doing a table. But anyway, I wanted to let you know about it because if you were always talking about growth, it's a great place to interact with authors from all different genres and to get those inside notes and connections with people that help you with the marketing and do all that and audiobooks. That's how I met Blackstone and developed a relationship with Blackstone, and now I do audiobooks. So anyway, just FYI, it might be of use to you. I know it's hard to get away with kids and all that, but just FYI.
Well, it's also November is a hard time for me too because I've got 10 shows a week.
It's true. Oh, that's right. November. Yeah. It is a bad time for you, but I just wanted to make you aware of it because I mean you're somebody that I think would do real well interacting with this crowd. There's also a 20 books to 50K group on Facebook you could join and interact with and learn about other opportunities as well. I think you do because you're successful. You do real well. So I think that I just wanted to make you aware of that. This is all about networking, guys. The number one thing about if you want to be successful in the arts, whether it's theater or writing or art itself is networking, and it's really just relating to each other as human beings like we're doing right now. It's not about going out and saying, "Hey, I'm Bryan Tyler Schmidt. I write books. My books are awesome. You should read my books." It's
Yeah.
more about I took an interest in Aleese because I watched her on TikTok, watched her stuff, and thought she really has some interesting things to say. She's fun to talk to. It's the same way, and eventually people will ask you, "Oh, what do you write? What do you do?" And that's where you get the chance to pitch your book. So networking is a huge thing I wanted to point out. I mean, have you obviously you meet your editors through this editing company that you talked about, which was what was it again? Just so if people want to know.
So I've used both Readsy to hire people and typewrite editing. So TYPERIGHT editing. And
I'm
the
actually I'm an editor with Readsy, so yeah, I work for Readsy, so yeah.
yeah, Readsy has a lot of great people on there. That's a really great place to go.
Yeah.
So
Cool. And so let's see. Let me see. I'm looking to see if there's any more questions down here. Nope, no questions coming in yet. All right. So why did you decide to write YA? I mean, obviously you loved Harry Potter.
I mean, there's something about inspiring younger minds to me. Not that
Yeah.
YA is super young, and I mean, I'm in my late 20s and I still love reading it. I know women in their 50s who love reading it, and I kind of leak into the new adult era too. But there's just something special about putting a book in a younger mind's hands and them reading it, them feeling inspired and just going, thank you so much for giving me that story. That helped me get through all this crap we go through as young adults. It's hard to get through high school, to get through learning how to become an adult. And I just feel like giving them stories to entertain them or even help them learn more about themselves is a special way to do that.
Heck, I'm 54. I'm still learning how to be an adult. What can I say?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a 26-year-old teenage mom, so.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Every day. Yeah, I'm about to have an instant family. I'm moving my fiance and the two teenagers from the Philippines in January. They're finally getting the visa, and I'm like, boy, I'm all of a sudden. I've always wanted a family, but boy, this is gonna be a lesson. There's gonna be a lot of things to learn. So, instant fatherhood. So I'll feel like I really don't know how to be an adult. It's like adulting 101 all over again. But anyway, yeah, no, I mean, one of the things about doing YA that's got to be cool is the fact that that at some point in a few years you can introduce all that to your kids, and so you can say, well, this is what Mama's been doing all that time when she goes and locks herself in the room, or
Yeah.
when she's trying to ignore you and you're frustrated as a child, those kind of things, and hopefully they'll fall in love with your books too. I mean, that's got to be a really cool. I mean, something to think about anyway.
I do think about that all the time. I'm just like, and that's also another thing. I try to write my books in a way where I wouldn't be embarrassed if they read them. So there's I have no qualms against spicy books or books with a lot of swearing. If you want to read that, that's totally fine to me. But for me, I've always want to write in a way that parents don't have to worry if they don't want their kids reading that,
Right. Yeah. So you don't have, yeah. The questions you get from your kids later. Whoa, Mom, I didn't know you talked like that. Whoa.
Exactly. That's like a nightmare of mine.
Oh, it's funny. I live that because when I write, I actually write a little bit of romance and women's fantasy, but I also, in my thrillers, every once in a while there's a sex scene or something, and my parents read it, so I'm always like, oh, don't ask too many questions, please. It's like, what do you put in a book, and there's gritty language in mine because I'm writing noir, so I tend to go that way. But yeah, I'm always like, oh God, I have to look at my mother. She's just read my book. Can I look her in the eye?
Well, I mean, I definitely read stuff like that. It's like I dabble in reading things with that stuff. I also have a hard time sitting there and going, just giggling because I'm having a hard time writing that scene. It's like.
Right. No, I hear you. It's something. Yeah. No, and so I'm just saying the nightmare is real. No.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. I haven't had anybody say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you wrote that." But it's definitely an experience. But it's great. I think it's great because you got what? I saw two kids. You said you have two kids, right?
Yeah, too. Yeah.
So two
Mm-hmm.
girls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, this is great because for them, look at what you're doing. You're only 26, which is young, and yet you've got all these books out. You're enterprising. You're doing all this, and you're balancing being a good mom and all of that. And they're going to look at that and they're going to think we can do anything.
Yeah,
We
that's
can do
one of my
anything.
dreams too. I want to teach my girls that it is good to be a mother, but that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice what the other things you want to do. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure learning the balance of discipline, there's all kinds of things to teach too. So that's a pretty cool thing.
yeah.
Guys, please like and follow Aleese, and please follow this live. I do this every week, Monday through Friday. Most of the time, it's 5 days a week at this time for an hour, and we'll have authors as well as artists and musicians on occasion. And please, obviously support these authors. Go out and you can buy her books. You can get them on Kindle Unlimited. You can obviously get them on Amazon. They're all available there. You have them in paperback. Do you have hardcovers too? You have hardcovers too for some, right?
There are some hardcovers for Inspector Mage.
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble is selling a few of my books too because they picked them up recently.
Okay,
But
good.
yeah,
Congratulations. That's a good feeling, isn't it? Have you
yeah,
walked in a
it
store?
is. It's
Have you
like
walked in a store and seen one yet?
not yet. Springfield, the town close to me, they might start putting them in. So I want to go over there and go, look, there are my books.
It is
But
the coolest feeling. I've actually had the pleasure of having quite a few because I've worked with some New York publishers. So it's always fun to you go in there. Every time I go in there, I'm like a little child. Every time I was like, oh, there I am. Oh my God. You take a
yeah,
picture of yourself with it. You feel kind of silly, but I mean, it's such a great feeling. It's just like that here I am next to all these other authors, that are much bigger names than me. It's really cool. So that's a big accomplishment. That's congrats. And they picked it up because you're successful too, which is a nice compliment. I mean, they don't
yeah.
just carry they carry some of mine because I know the local distributor and she wants to support me. Thank you for the glasses. But I mean, obviously, maybe you know somebody too. But I'm just saying they got your books in the store. That's a huge thing. They think they're worthy of carrying. That's a big deal. So,
It feels
um, yeah. So, let's talk about, we got a few minutes left. We have, guys, if you have any questions, get them in here. This is Aleese Hughes. She is a TikTok author. You can find her on here. And she is always doing a lot. I see videos every day from her, and she's doing a lot of stuff. She also has, like was it 8 books out? 8 books?
10 books.
10 books. 10 books. Okay, I lost track of a couple. And there's 3 series. What's your next? I mean, what are we working on now? What are the newest thing? Obviously, you got another Inspector Mage coming out, so you've been in the process of working on that. You're obviously writing another one in the Edge series. What else do you have going on? Are those your main big things going on?
Those are my main big things going on. I'm also planning on completely redoing my Princess series with the editors and recovers and stuff, so that's a big project. But my next new project after these is something that it's one of the first books I wrote when I was like 12. And I'm retaking that whole idea, turning it into that epic fantasy adventure I was telling you about that's going to be around 80 to 100,000 words. I base the name of my publishing company off of that. I own my publishing company now because I sell so many paperbacks myself, but it's not big in any way, but I'm planning on growing it. And I named my publishing company after this book because it is the book I have been trying to do my whole life, that story, and I'm ready to get that story out into the world, and that's my huge project that's coming in like the next 5 years.
So, what is the name of that publishing company? Just and the book, obviously.
So the publishing company is called Writ Keepers Publishing, so RIT, and writ in Latin means like command. And so in this
Yeah.
world, this book I'm writing, it'll be called Keepers of the Writ, and their magic has a lot to do with commanding people through words. So
Okay, very cool.
yeah.
Very interesting. Well, I look forward to seeing that, and that's really cool. So you just said you do a lot of direct sales. How does that work? Do you have a warehouse full of books? I mean, what do you do? I mean, just to give people an idea, because direct sales is actually something that is really starting to be a big deal for indies. But direct sales basically means that you can go to her website or wherever, you can buy an autographed copy, you can buy whatever you want, basically 5 copies, and she'll ship them directly to you. Sometimes they come in a really fancy envelope with special gifts. The authors do. It depends on probably how many orders they have or what you're doing. But basically, she's basically hand selling the physical books to you and shipping them. Do you handle all that yourself, or do you have somebody that does that for you?
I do handle it all myself, but it's getting insane. And I feel like eventually I'm going to have to put them in a warehouse and hire some assistants, because it's getting to the point where I've got like 100 boxes lined up in our room, and we keep a
Yeah.
lot of my inventory at our theater as well because I sell so
Yes.
many at the theater. But
Yeah.
so that's what I'm doing now.
That's the trick. I have to build an office in my garage. I just had to give up my storage space for books. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with them all. So yeah, I'm building a lot of extra bookshelves when I build this office. I have to make a room for my teenage son who's coming. So I'm giving up my house office, and that's the biggest challenge. And I have 36 books out. So you
Wow,
can
that's
imagine
awesome.
how much stock I have. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a lot of stock, and every once in a while the companies clean out their warehouse and they just ship you books. So they say if you want them discount, you can buy them. So you buy them because you think I'll never have to buy them again, right? Well, sometimes you're like, I bought too many. I'll never sell all these. It is what it is. But anyway, that's great. So, I mean, as far as how did you set that up? You set up some kind of storefront for that people could go to? Where do they go? They go to your website. Do you have like AleeseHughes.com? Where do they go?
Yes, I have AleeseHughes.com, and there are links in there to buy signed copies. It takes you to my store, and you can just buy whatever copies you want on there, and I'll sign them and I'll ship them to you. And you are crazy. So yeah, that's how you can do it.
It's
So
my
Elise,
fault. I'm instigating with her, so I'm just keeping her entertained so you can do what you do.
you guys are
Okay,
so
so yeah, so go. I'm sorry, I talked over here a little bit. AleeseHughes.com.
yes.
Okay. AleeseHughes.com. There's a store link there. You can buy, if you want autographed copies, you can do that. I see a question down here. I don't know who this is, but talking about Jenny Cider. Have you tried Jenny Cider?
I
I don't
don't
know who Jenny Cider.
I don't
Yeah.
either. Sorry.
No, we have not tried Jenny Cider. We don't know who that is. But you know what? I think I should ask you before we have like a 5 or 6 minutes left. Who are your boy? I don't want to put you in a bad spot because we're on TikTok. But who are some of your favorite? Some of your favorite, not your only favorite TikTok authors that you've discovered and enjoy reading.
Oh man, that's a really good question. And I can't even remember all their names because they just pop up on my TikTok and I know their face. You know,
Okay,
um,
fair enough. Fair enough.
um, I really like I really like you for one thing. You're one of my favorites that I just networked with recently because I stopped doing TikTok for like a year and I just came back on like 3 months ago. And you're one of the first ones that I connected with when I
Oh well,
came.
thank you.
I really like her name is Bethany. I cannot pronounce her last name for the life of me. She wrote the Stolen Kingdom book. It's a
Golden
fairy tale
Kingdom.
retelling of Aladdin, and she's on my list of reading 50 authors. And I really like the videos she does. I really like Christina Macquarie. I think that's her last name. She wrote this Secrets of Asoria. That's on my TBR list. That looks really good. She says it's like a Chronicles of Narnia / Harry Potter type
Wow,
story.
that does sound good. That
Yeah,
really
doesn't
does.
it?
What a
That's
combination.
yeah.
Yeah, because for me, the fantasy books, obviously I'm about 30 years older than you, or 28. But for me, when I was a kid, the Narnia books were the Harry Potter. You know, you would read them, and they had an animated series made back then. And also, I'll get to your question in a minute. They had an animated series that they actually did a decent job with. This was long before they made movies out of it. But boy, that series just really was amazing, and it really took me away. And one of the amazing things is all the allegory in it. I mean, he obviously C.S. Lewis was a Christian. Christianity was important. He's written a lot of nonfiction books about his faith. But I didn't even know much of that when I read those books. I didn't even realize the resurrection story, the redemption stories that were going on in there until I was much older. But there's so much depth to them. One of the nice things about that, and I think the same is true of Harry Potter. You could read them as a child and you get one thing out of them, but then years later, if you reread them, you get a whole nother set of layers.
It's
And that's
amazing.
just good storytelling.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings too. That Lord of the Rings is
Oh,
that way as well.
Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the things I always remind people, because the world building in Tolkien is out of this sight, but that's because a lot of people don't write milieu fantasies anymore. And the Lord of the Rings really is a milieu fantasy, which the world, that means a world is a character in the story. That's why the world is so rich and developed. If people don't realize how much the little touches of the world make a difference in how it comes together. But how do you, I mean, how do you do any research obviously when you're writing? How do you come up with your worlds? Are they all secondary worlds, or do you borrow from what you see around you?
So that's a really good question. With Inspector Mage, I tried to make a fantasy world that was not our world at all, but very steampunky 1920s feel. So I did have to do a decent amount of research for that one I wanted them to have similar clothing. I wanted them to have similar issues that sparked the whole let's party because tomorrow we're going to die type feel the 1920s had. And
Yeah.
obviously their struggles aren't the same, but there's a lot of parallel to it. And the books develop in a way the books develop in the way almost towards their own Great Depression. Like what happens for their fantasy world for that type of thing to happen to them.
Oh, that's
So,
cool. Interesting parallel. One of the questions, Oz is one of my regulars. He's a good friend of mine, but he had a question. I know we talked about this earlier, but for those who are wondering, she doesn't have any audiobooks yet, right? But she's still in the process of trying to get that done.
mhm.
You're going to do them yourself, you said.
I am probably going to do a few myself. I have a few people in the talks to do some others. And I am working on it. I get that question all the time, and I know that people want it. So I think next year I will have at least a couple audiobooks out.
Send me a message later. I'll hook you up with Blackstone. They're always looking. So
Okay.
you can talk to them. Maybe they'll buy some of your books on audio or something. I mean, you never know. So they pay good advances. They do a great job. They get really great narrators. So I'll hook you up with them because I think you're exactly what they're looking for. They would love your stuff. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, this is it. See, this is networking, folks. This is what we do. We help each other out, encourage each other, and so I want to thank you for taking time because it's got to be hard with the kids being home with the kids. But you guys did great. I mean, you were entertaining at least. That's fine. So thank you for letting us talk with your mama. I'm going to let you have her back again. I'm Bryan Thomas Schmidt. I am an author and editor. My latest book is actually Shortcut, which you can get. It's so hard to make it work on this thing. Shortcut, which you can get in my profile on the link in the first tab. It's on sale on Kindle right now for 99 cents through Sunday to celebrate the release of the audio, which just came out on Tuesday. The audiobook is Stefan Rudnicki. That's who I am. You can find me at BryanThomasSchmidt.net. You can find me on Instagram. All those links are there on the thing. This is Aleese Hughes. I know she has a link tree too where you can go and check out all this stuff. Join her newsletter. Again, like and follow. And hopefully come back here every Monday through Friday, and we'll have more great conversation. Yeah, Stefan's awesome to work with, Christy. And we'll have more conversations like this about books and things. I will post the replay in a slightly edited form, just clean up the front and back and put the tags on it. It will be on YouTube on my channel. It's widely available. You guys can listen to this, share it with other people. Please do share it. And thanks for coming in and spending the evening with us. Thank you for your questions and your gifts to both her and I, and all of your likes. And hey, Aleese, bless you with your continued success. And thanks again for making time. I know you have a really crazy schedule, so I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you. I really appreciate you having me. And yes, thanks to everyone who watched and for the gifts as well. And yeah, it was really fun.
That's great. And we'll probably have her back at some point down the road. But anyway, we will see you all on Monday when I have I think it's Michael Mickelson, who's a fantasy author here on TikTok. He'll be our guest. So everybody have a great weekend, and I'm out. This is Creator Talk Live. Take care.